Hands down, no.
For me too, hands down, no.
Hi, I'm Amy and I head up the talent acquisition team here at ShopBack. I've been here for 3 coming 4 years really soon actually. What about you?
Also in the same team, under regional talent acquisition. My name is Natalie and I focus on commercial hiring across different markets. Yep, it's my first year and it's still very exciting. What was your dream job when you were younger and how different is that from your current role?
This may sound very silly, but I grew up my entire life wanting to be a doctor. Why I wanted to be a doctor was because I thought I could help people in need and save lives. However, life has a funny way of doing things and bringing you along on a journey, and I ended up in talent acquisition. At first, I have to admit that I was a little bit lost at what I was doing, but I think about in my 2nd or 3rd year in, I realized that this role has a lot of potential to actually help people and actually guide people in finding a role that matters to them.
Awesome. Okay, so my turn. For me, I'm not as noble as being a doctor, but growing up, I always wanted to be an interior designer. One day, I told my mom, like, hey mom, I want to be an interior designer. And then she's been like, it's gonna be a lot of tough work. So I was like, okay, fine. So I was thinking like, what should I do next, right? Because I like creative, I like arts, but at the same time, I'm a very logical person. I love my numbers. I'm a mathematical A-star student kind of thing growing up. So I was like, okay, maybe I should do marketing because that's a blend of both. You might find this quite interesting or quite funny that I actually did marketing all my life. Came out from school, did my first 2 years in a marketing boutique agency. And then one day I called my friend and I was like, hey, you know, and she happens to be a recruiter in an external recruitment agency. And I was like, hey, you know, if you guys have anything out there, please let me know. I want something new. I want to grow. I want to be, you know, I want to get new exposure, right? And she was like, come and join us. So that was kind of how my recruitment journey started. And ever since, you know, I fell in love with recruitment because at the end of the day, you know, I get to meet people. I learn so much from them. There's so much information. And I love using information that I have to influence a positive outcome. So yeah, 7 years later, I'm still here.
If you're comfortable with sharing, what are some of the hardest moments juggling your work life and your personal life? Nat, go.
Well, a few years ago, when I was single and had a lot of time on my hands, I can do whatever I want, any freedom of time. But fast forward now, I'm in a long-term committed relationship. I have a new doggy named Rudy. He's my pet dog. I love him so much. He has changed my entire lifestyle. So because of that, I have also learned that I can't just do what I want in my own time. I have to find a balance between what I like to do when it comes to work and when it comes to my own personal life and what I have to prioritize. And I realized that, you know, it's never easy, right, to really find that real balance. But I think for me, it's really making time and showing up when I need to, whether it's personal or whether it's in my professional life. Like, it applies to both. Yeah. How about you, Amy?
But I think for me, there was this period where I actually hurt my back and I was in a very tough spot, right? I felt exhausted physically and also mentally and also emotionally. So I think that was the toughest part where I had to juggle my health, my well-being, my family, and of course my little dog Buttons as well, who is very demanding. Yeah, so I think that was a very tough part where I felt like every day was just trying to get through, right? I think what was really cool was in that period, like everyone around me at ShopBack just showed up, right? Even though they didn't have to. Like, I actually had team members from either the TA team or even from other other teams that we collaborate with. They were coming up to me and say, hey Amy, get well soon. How can I actually help you? How can I help you to get through this period? And I think that is something that is so precious. Yeah, so I think that was probably one of the toughest and darkest moments, but it was very heartening to know that you know, there were people around me that really cared and wanted to see me get better.
Was there any part of your working life that you felt was an obstacle because you were female? Unfortunately, I faced this once. Okay, so I think I'm the kind of person where it's like a mindset thing, right? If you don't think about it, you don't really realize it until you face a situation. Then you're like, oh, this just happened. I never thought I would experience something like that before. And I realized that a lot of things cannot move was because of my seniority and also my gender. I had to actually at that point use my managing director's name. He happens to be a guy as well and the head of the business to actually push things through, even though I'm the one, like, you know, I know what to do next and everything, but I need to use his name to like, oh, because he said this, can we do this? To actually move things forward. Yeah, so that was like the one time where I felt like, oh, because I'm a female and maybe also because I was so young that, you know, no one really listens to what I have to say. Yeah.
Well, I think for me, in the early days of my career, I think what you said really got me thinking as well. Oftentimes when we had to go out and meet clients, I was also really young, really junior, but it was very difficult to actually work with certain clientele, right? And I think a lot of times they preferred to speak to a more senior male, and I think that was very challenging, especially we were still learning, we were still growing, but I think that kind of, I guess, preference from clients sometimes can be quite stifling mentally as well. So I think perhaps after thinking about it, yeah, there were some instances like that. Yeah.
Do you feel that there are any existing gender biases in ShopBack?
This feels like an eyesight test. Okay. For me, hands down no.
For me too, hands down no. Okay, I think, as TAs, right, as talent acquisition partners here, I think from the very first touch point of, being that recruitment funnel for a lot of candidates in the market, I think it's very deliberate for us that we always make sure that whenever we speak to someone, whenever we approach someone, it's always merit-based. Yeah, not because if they are female, they are male, they are young, they are old, it's not because of all this, but really because of like their expertise and their background, right? And that actually is reflected through all the processes that we have as well, whether it's TA interviews to hiring managers to assessments, like case study is really all focused on, what the job looks like, right, essentially. Yeah. And I think that's a good first step also for a lot of companies.
Same here. I think if I could look at this from two fronts, right? So one is perhaps my personal journey here in ShopBack, and one is also part of our job scope, which is in the TA team. I think being part of the hiring team, we are in every step of the way. I think managers are also very, very deliberate about making sure that everything is purely merit driven. That shows in the way, the requirements that they're looking for, the way they actually craft out the job. And on top of that, there's also task force teams within the business that actually deliberately looks at data to make sure that there are no hiring biases, right? And we make sure to audit frequently to ensure that nothing falls through the crack. So I think that part, it is really, really cool. We also have hired quite a number of female leaders in the business, so always very inspiring. On a personal front, I think when I joined the company about 3.5 years ago, I was still relatively young and junior, and I think what I really appreciated was that my manager was very, very open to what I have learned. He was extremely supportive, extremely encouraging, and it didn't matter whether I was young or whether I was, female. I think all he cared about was that we are achieving good outcomes, we work with integrity, and that we also follow through with our culture values. So I think that was what was important. There was nothing else to it. So it felt very fair, it felt very safe. Yeah.
Okay, so for me, right, and this is like, I think a personal belief as well, I think just don't be afraid to go after something that you want at the end of the day, because actually the scarier it seems means the more exciting it is also, right? And that's one thing, like, if my, inner self tell me like, oh my god, this is so scary, but oh my god, it's so exciting, like this is, it's worth it, and just go for it, because what's the worst that can happen, right? If it doesn't work out, it's okay, learn from it and go for something else next. Yeah, so I would say don't be afraid to just try and go for it and put in your best foot forward.
I think for me, if I could give my younger self some words of wisdom, and also perhaps maybe people who are starting out a career, is, I think, similar to what Nat said, right? Don't be afraid. I think a lot of times you are the, don't listen to that voice inside of you that says that, oh, you can't do it, it's too difficult. The truth is, I always thought that it was going to be too difficult until I actually did it. It was not underplaying that to say that it was easy, but the truth is you're a lot stronger than you think you are. I think a lot of times the thoughts and the wisdom that you bring from life experiences can actually also really play a part. So don't be afraid, be strong, be brave. Don't be afraid as well to reach out to different people in the community. And if someone says no, just look for someone else. Don't be afraid to get a mentor, and don't be afraid to call it out if something's not right.